is great. I got the whole rest of the summer to hang out in this room with all these games and have a grand old time.
Yo!
Looking at the majority of all the countdowns I've made on this channel, it seems that for the most part, I'm happiness and rainbows, always talking about things I love, stuff I think is interesting, and just overall seeming like an overly positive guy. Well, I'm sick of being positive. I want to showcase to you guys that for as much as I love video games, they can still find ways to effortlessly push my buttons and drag my enjoyment through the dirt. And while I could talk about the worst this, most terrible that, overrated whatever, Jesus no, not touching that again, I decided that I'd talk about something a little different than just something being bad or incredibly hard, something being tedious. What I mean by this is those instances in video games that are monotonous, boring, slow, repetitive, dull, or tiresome, just parts of the game that are not enjoyable, require time to be put into them, and often for me, the low points of the game. Some of the standard rules apply here. One game per franchise, only from games I've played, but I have two additional rules here. First, all entries on this list are from games that I personally like. I could simply jack this list full of entries from games I don't like, but I feel that it'd be a little bit uninspired and tedious in itself to do. Also, after talking about how much I love games like these for 2 years, I'm in the mood to illustrate that even great games can be flawed. And second, I'm only including segments from the main story of games. No post-game or side quest missions are allowed on this list. Alright, let's get this ball rolling down this most certainly muddy slope. Kirby Triple Deluxe. What an utterly fantastic new addition to the Kirby series, with its new copy abilities, new powers, great levels, and overall just a fun time. But I'm not here to have fun, guys, and be all happy and hunky-dory. I'm here to talk about a tedious segment from this game, and frankly, I had two options from this game. I originally thought of the DDD tour from this list, so I could rip this thing apart for being a DDD tour from my fun! But after applying my main story only rule into this, I settled on something different that, while not as horrible and fender as the DDD tour, deserves to be noted. The majority of Royal Road. Alright, simply from a game design point of view, there is nothing wrong with these levels. The problem, however, comes from how freaking uninspired and uninteresting this area is. Looking at the other areas of the game that brought so many new and fascinating landscapes and environments for you to explore, you'd expect an area called Royal Freaking Road to have lots of new, unique areas like castle interiors and exteriors, and maybe even a cool cityscape to explore. What do we get? The new and fascinating landscapes and environments you've seen already just lazily slapped together to create new levels. Nearly everything in these stages is recycled content, such as refighting every boss again, which frankly is common in a lot of games, but more so rehashing a couple of Hypernova segments and rehashing nearly every single secret stage into one instead of making a new one. Instead of feeling like you're entering the enemy stronghold and nearing the end of your journey, you feel like the developers went, "This part of the game was good, right? So let's do it again! It'll be just as fun the second time around!" It's not. It's uninspired, uninteresting, and not fun. Pretty much the only level in Royal Road that kinda has new stuff is the last level before the final boss, and it's almost entirely going in and out of portals into rooms of jumping around on floating crystals. Well, except for
devouring every fucking thing with your super suction ability.
Pretty much, Royal Road isn't hard or anything. It's just bland and not that fun. Well, except for the utterly amazing boss battles at the end of it, but now's not the time to talk about it. Let's just move on. Speaking of rehashing content... Okay, Okami, just listen to me. I love ya. I love you dearly with my heart and soul. You're beautiful, with your amazing graphics, great story, lovely music, and of course some sweet gameplay to go with it. But even I can't let it slide that you make us refight the most tedious and long-winded boss fight in the game twice. Now, I liked Orochi the first time. It was climactic, had awesome music, so much story played out here, and while it was a bit tedious by itself, slaying each of Orochi's heads one by one was amazingly satisfying. That first battle with him is one of my favorites in the whole game. The second and third time... It was boring enough having to do the whole fight over again with true Orochi, which is not designed to be a game design way of showing how strong you've become like in these games, but rather making you do the same long process of shoving booze into their mouths, breaking a bell on their back, force-feeding them more booze, and then killing them. And both times watching Susanoo and Nagi deal the finishing blow with power slashing each head. And after all that, along with all the other boss refights in the Arc of Yamato, the 8-headed son of a bitch shows up again. You know what that means? More booze filling, more bell breaking, even more booze filling, and more killing. Jesus, I need a goddamn drink to get through this shit!
People drink this shit? You want to finish this off?
Seriously though, because you literally have to eliminate each head one at a time, an average time beating Orochi is between 10 to 15 minutes. And instead of staying at the same level while you get stronger, true Orochi rises up to your level, so it takes the same time again. It's no easier. In terms of the time span of these battles, you can pretty much beat the 4 other bosses in the Arc of Yamato in the time it takes to beat just Orochi. To me at least, that's ridiculous. Clover Studios, I understand that the first match with Orochi was intense and amazing, but just because a boss is great the first time doesn't mean it's a great idea to rehash it twice. It just makes what should be a sweet and memorable fight dull, repetitive, and monotonous. Even more so in Okami Den when you do the Susanoo Nagi decapitation another 2 times. P.S. I still love you guys at the Okami Studios, please don't hate me. Collectathon Scavenger Hunts! Oh joy. This is a mechanic that honestly is hit or miss for me. Sometimes I find it dreadful, and sometimes I don't find it too bad. But because these are from games I like, I'm going to be tearing into... I'm going to hate myself for this... Metroid Prime 1 and 2. Whenever I replay these games, I always dread getting to the end because I know I'm going to have to do one of these. Either finding all the Chozo artifacts or finding all the Sky Temple keys. Even from my first playthrough of both primes, I refuse to use a guide, wanting to experience these massive and amazing worlds myself, and experience this game for myself. But getting to the final area and being told, alright, you see, you done good, but you're gonna have to go back and search the entire world again to get a bunch of artifacts, keys, or whatever to get inside. Guess fighting giant monsters and behemoths and fighting off an army is enough to get taken inside. Tough shit, mate. Now where's me being stubby? I just kinda went, fuck it! And resorted to reading a walkthrough to get the things I needed. In terms of the Chozo artifacts, I can sorta let a bit of it slide, as you can get a good number of them from just messing around and exploring rooms, and the hint system available does give a lot of advice, but you're still forced to backtrack to areas you've been to before, and on occasion do dumb things like shoot a missile at a tower to get it to appear, or go back to the first boss's room and kill some ghosts for it. But the bigger offender is easily Prime 2. Where in every area of the game, you had to hunt down 3 keys to get to the boss. The final area, the Sky Temple, requires 9 keys. Instead of exploring a new area for the keys, collect another 3 keys from every area you've been to. And unlike Prime 1, you pretty much have to wait till the end of the game to get most of them, because the two needed upgrades, the Dark Visor and the Light Suit, are given to you very late into the game. Sounds fun, right? These games are still awesome, and I'd recommend them to anybody, but just be prepared to crank out a walkthrough at this point. Saves you a lot of time, and it's much lighter on the attention span. And besides, the reward for all this crap are some of my favorite bosses in the trilogy, so kinda worth it, I guess. I've said it before that I really am not a fan of the secret stages in Mario Sunshine. While I can concede that the purpose of them is to strip you of some of your abilities and see how well you function without them, using your basic platforming skills, they were annoying as hell and not that enjoyable. But the most infamous one that I agree is the worst and obviously the most tedious is Secret of the Village Underside. While every other secret stage was platforming precision and the skill of the player, Secret of the Village Underside is all about getting tossed from platform to platform by piantas. What makes it so tedious is not so much that you have little control over your progression in the stage, it's more that for the most part of the piantas, if you interact with them at slightly the wrong angle, you'll be tossed falling into the dark abyss and have to start the level all over again. It boils down to having a lot of patience to make sure they're facing the right directions to have you land on the platform, and to make matters worse, a lot of them are moving, making getting the angle right even harder and requiring even more waiting. You find this fun? Waiting for this guy to stop doing loops around this frickin' platform so we can toss you over a massive chasm that 90% of the time you'll get thrown into anyway? No, it's fine. I didn't have anything better to do with my time. This is good game design. The challenge goes from the Mario norm of platforming on spinning and moving platforms with agility and skill, to awkwardly fidgeting around some big-nosed jerks to get the angle that won't send you screaming to your death. It's such a pain in the ass because there's no way to do this faster, because if you rush talking to these assholes, you get tossed into the pit. And even if you have patience and try to get the right angle, you still get thrown in! This stage pretty much boils down to being lucky, and they don't even have the courtesy of making it fun. It's monotonous and incredibly unsatisfying. I know that there were other choices that I could have had, like Corona Mountain, the Pachinko Machine, or the Toxic Lily Pad ride that you have to take Yoshi all the way to, but Pachinko and the Lily Pad aren't required to beat Sunshine's main story. And Corona Mountain, beat it first attempt. Get on my level, scrub! You know that feeling when you're playing a game like Smash Bros. And you taunt, but then you get hit and feel like a dumbass? It's a terrible feeling, I know. So imagine if there was a game where after every combo, you're forced to involuntarily taunt, letting you get hit by enemies. Sounds painful, right? Well, now you have an idea what it's like to play as Shinobu in No More Heroes 2. I've touched on this before, and I'll do it again. Shinobu's levels in No More Heroes 2 suck. Like I said before, one of her main problems is her taunting, which leads to her getting hit by enemies and knocked to the ground, making almost every fight against normal enemies a hassle with how much time you'll be spending on the floor spazzing to get back up. Also, they decided for some reason to introduce platforming into her levels, and it works just as well as you'd expect it to. Every jump is finicky and awkward and just a pain in the ass to get right, and a lot of her 2 stages are made specifically for this jumping mechanic, so I hope you have enough patience and attention span to watch Shinobu flip through the air to no avail other than looking like an idiot in the recording. But the worst part about Shinobu is that she's really not that fun to play as, at least compared to Travis or Sir Henry motherfucker! Her weapon isn't as cool, she never really does as many flashy techniques as Travis, and her personality isn't as entertaining as the other 2 characters. If you want one more nail in the tedium coffin of her stages, the 2 bosses you face are Million Gunman and You Destroy Man, whose battles I find pretty much as bad as Bastard Brat Jr. Million Gunman is an uninteresting character in himself, who loves to run away and hide in elevators to pop out elsewhere with you awkwardly jumping to get after him, but repeatedly the same dialogue and shooting you in the face. While New Destroy Man is one of my favorite bosses from the first game, turned into an annoying and boring fight against 2 Destroy Men. How did you fuck up having 2 of these guys? It should be awesome! You fight one of them hand to hand while the other snipes from a distance, and after beating the hand to hand Destroy Man, you can either choose to chase after the other Destroy Man with more platforming, or just wait around till he comes to the ground. Boring, dull, monotonous, and tiresome are the perfect words to sum up these stages. If only we had more Henry. Might have made up for it. One game I've really come to enjoy since after the top 100 that I owned before I began it is Shadow of the Colossus. I didn't think much of it at the beginning, but after really sitting down and playing it, there are so many great things about this game. Every boss is unique and well structured and thought out, the music is fantastic, and the story and message it carries is very impacting and really lingers with you. I just have one major problem with it. Are we there yet? Traveling to each Colossus is what turned me off this game in the first place. For as grand and epic as each battle with the 16 Colossi was, I always found it hard to motivate myself to dedicate like a third of the game's total length to running across a barren wasteland on horseback with almost literally nothing to do. It feels to me like going to the beach in the summer. It's great when you get there, but you gotta drive for an hour to get there, so you'd look at stuff out the window, except there's really nothing to look at when you're riding to the Colossi, and I'm still not there yet. Why is this a thing?! Now, before I get anyone pissed off at me, I understand that the purpose of the large emptiness of the overworld is a way of emphasizing the desolate scope of this land, and to strip it down to a total feeling of isolation and loneliness, sort of reflecting the emotional and mental state of the protagonist Wanda, as well as solidifying an atmospheric game feel and provide a time for the player to be alone with their thoughts and in the silence. But on the other hand, Christ! Getting to each of the 16 is basically the same sort of hoo-ha. Go outside, hold your sword up to be shown the direction to travel in, and go in that direction. That's it. No enemies to halt your progress, no NPCs to talk to, no secret dungeons to explore, really just the 16 Colossi and a huge barren wasteland in between all of them. And again, I realize this was an intentional decision, but that doesn't stop it from being tedious as hell. The only real things you can do while traveling is find fruits from trees to increase your health, and chase and shoot some wiggly woogly salamanders, which are way harder to kill than you'd think considering your experience fighting giant stone skybirds, to increase your grip. I'm glad I got to play through Shadow of the Colossus and fight all 16 of these mostly amazing boss fights, but getting to each of these fights always made me consider whether or not I cared enough to keep playing. And intentional or not is a huge stain on what I do find to be an amazing game. Big story. Big story. Big's fucking story. That's it. I'm done. I'm not doing this shit. I'm not doing this. This is the most... Why does this mode have to exist? Okay, let's stop for a moment and consider what playing as the two new characters in Sonic Adventure is like. Gamma's story is going through levels with a badass and actual developing character robot shooting everything up in intense and fast gameplay. In Big Story, you play as a fat cat fishing. Literally just sitting on your fat ass trying to catch fish, and may I point out that if you fail to reel in a fish, it counts as a death? What?! The fishing mechanics are annoying and uninteresting, making it dull and boring catching any fish, and having pretty much no satisfaction in catching anything. This is the only reason I haven't actually beaten Sonic Adventure. This shit is not difficult. Really, it's not. But there is no motivation and no incentive to keep playing. You go to the first level of Big Story, you try to catch Froggy, which is annoying to do because it's very particular about catching Froggy, unless you went out of your way to get a lure upgrade that makes the level actually kind of manageable. You also have some fish to catch, but they're all optional and actually mostly just get in the way of catching Froggy. You can catch them for a better score, but End of level 1. Level 2. Catch fish, catch Froggy. End of stage. You see where this is going. Every level is the exact same stage, all because after catching Froggy, BK manages to butterfingers and loses Froggy again. Every single time. Why the hell is he an important character again? The same boring, monotonous, dumb concept is recycled again and again, really just to make you work a little bit harder to unlock the final boss fight. Why would you consistently recycle and reuse the same shitty content? I can at least understand in cases like Orochi that they're rehashing good content. It's definitely not as good the second or third time, but at least the first time was good. If it fails the first time, don't do the exact same thing again. This is freaking 6-year-old stuff, come on guys. But to make the whole experience worse, we have to spend our time listening to Big Talkin', which is one of the most annoying voices in the Sonic series. Big story is literally pointless. I can think of merits in every single other character story in the game, whether it be the contribution to the game's plot, fun gameplay, and sometimes just the characters, except Big story. I can't think of a single redeeming quality here. The entire thing is a boring, tedious, and pointless waste of time. At least the story is pretty short, so the hassle isn't absolutely massive. The next entry is though. But seriously though, We Play has more engaging fishing games. We frickin' play. Let that sink in. For as amazing as Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS are, there was one element that I miss from prior games. The story mode. I mean, the Subspace Emissary was a feature I always found pretty enjoyable. It was something cool to do to learn how to play as all the characters, and was an easy way to unlock all the characters. I don't know why they would decide to remove my favorite feature and... Oh wait. Yeah, I do. The Great Maze. It's amazing how tedious this thing is. Fuck it, just cut the whole part. Just cut that part out. Holy shit! This place is legendary among all Brawl players. For the final level of the Subspace Emissary, you go through a huge, and I mean huge maze, constructed of every area you've gone to in the game, with endless numbers of enemy swarms, roadblocks, dead ends, and a very faint sense of direction. You can spend literally hours getting lost and disoriented trying to find where the final boss is in the maze. But you know what? Finding him in a gigantic maze isn't challenging enough. Do you know the best way to make this level even longer? Sakurai does. He's got the most perfect juicy idea in that genius head of his. When you find the final room, you still can't go on to fight Taboo because it's barred off. Want to know how to unlock the final lock? Go back into the maze, explore every area and door, and not only refight every single boss you've fought in the game, but also every character you have unlocked. Yup, all 7 boss battles and all 31 characters. Oh, I hope you have some time on your hands because this maze is not getting beaten easily. No matter how many times you play this mode, no matter how good you get at these characters, even if you turn the difficulty all the way down, you'll be doing this for a couple hours at the very least. It's absolutely absurd. And the worst part of this gigantic maze is, like I said, every part of this maze is recycled from an earlier part of the game. I understand complaints about the rehashing content in Royal Road, Orochi, and Big Story, but this is an entirely different level to all of those. While those were rehashes, they didn't take up absurd amounts of time, unlike the Great Maze, where you can pretty much dedicate a whole afternoon to getting through it. However, I have to say that I still do enjoy it to a degree. While it's ruthlessly long-winded and intensely tedious, it is still a pretty fun level, and especially when I've decided to do it with a friend, it becomes a little easier, what with the company and everything. But still, just be ready to dedicate some time to it. This area is never over quickly. On the other hand, I would have preferred a story mode over Smash Run or Smash Tour. Just find that story mode more engaging and fun than these two. To each their own, I guess. I tried, guys. I tried so hard not to put the obvious choice on the list. I selected many other alternate choices from the series that I thought were tedious as well, but I can't. This has to be on the list. The most tedious segment from the Legend of Zelda series is the Water Temple from Ocarina of Time. Oh, Speedster! Unoriginality 2015 Best Opinions of the Year! I know that this is the utterly generic choice to pick from the Zelda series, and I did try to avoid putting it on the list, considering the Triforce collecting side quests from Wind Waker, the Temple of the Ocean King from Phantom Hourglass, or even other water-based dungeons like Great Bay Temple or Lake Bed Temple, but the Water Temple just wins. If the Great Maze was legendary, this is almost god tier in terms of infamy. I said a long time ago in my collab video with Rabbit Luigi that it took me 2 months to beat the Water Temple, and that was no exaggeration. First of all, as the title suggests, this temple is a water level, which are synonymous for being slow and awkward. In Ocarina of Time's case, slowing down all your movement and allowing only one weapon out of your entire arsenal to be used, the hook shot. To build on top of that, the whole process of having to go into your inventory, scrolling around and manually de-equipping your iron boots to sink and resurface just adds more unnecessary tedium to this level, which was thankfully fixed in the 3DS version. Thank you, Jesus! And having to frequently change the water level of the dungeon that can only be adjusted in certain spots of the dungeon, which are conveniently spaced apart, just forces more effort and time to be dispensed into it. But these are the generic complaints that everyone gives the water temples, so I'm being totes insightful here. And in terms of length and duration, the Great Maze easily trumps it. So why do I think the water temple's worse? Because unlike the Great Maze, the water temple somehow manages to be the most exhausting for me. I've played this temple multiple times over the years, and every time I've done it, it seems to suck all the energy and life out of me. I think it's a big colossal mix of the slow progression, the insanely limited item use, the cycling through menus, the repeated backtracking through areas to change the water level, the winding corridors that all look the same, the grueling task of searching for keys to open locked door after locked door, and the music that, while unique and not a bad piece of music, sort of has its own little hypnotic effect on me, making my eyes start to droop and making it harder for me to concentrate. Oh, and in reference to those keys I mentioned, I was stuck for 2 months in the water temple because there was one key I couldn't find, which was in the central room when you raised the water level, but I never knew it was there because the camera doesn't pan down far enough! You would not believe how much that pissed me off all those years ago. Eiji Aonuma himself admitted that the water temple's design had a ton of issues that were awful and apologized formally, a number of issues being fixed in Ocarina of Time 3D. But that doesn't stop it being this tedious for me, because despite how infamous it is and how much I've experienced it, it's also incredibly forgettable. Like, no matter how many times I play this temple, I still get lost and can't figure out which way to go, because while the concept and issues of the dungeon are so memorable for me, the progression and layout of the dungeon itself always eludes me, making the tedium of this level a constant for me. So yeah, one of the most infamous levels in Zelda history has shown up on this list, and I completely agree with its problems. It's exhausting, confusing, and surprisingly forgettable, making this what I think is the most tedious level in all of Zelda. But I must say the Darkling battle was awesome. But just remember, we still have number 1 to contend with. Pokemon, a game series that is beloved for its fun elements, but also known for a number of tedious elements as well. Let's face it, grinding is a tedious aspect of any RPG, and while at times it's necessary to win a battle, it's still a universally accepted pain in the ass. But besides that, Pokemon games are full of other tedious parts such as capturing legendary Pokemon, strength puzzles, finding and catching rare Pokemon, and especially some trainer battles can be tedious. And if we were talking about the most tedious game in the series, I would say Pokemon Colosseum has, as a whole, the most tedious elements. Or the purification system, Mount Battle, and the save system, it takes the whole freaking cake. But all the tedium in this game is trumped by the final level of this game's sequel. Ladies and gentlemen, Dark Isle. No. Mew! Arceus freaking healing, save me! This level, this goddamn level, inspired this entire countdown, and you would not believe how long I've waited to talk about this level. Simply getting through this level is a test of patience and endurance, because believe me, this will take you longer than the Great Frickin' Maze. I can guarantee you that. This is number 1 of this list, and I want to really express to you guys how ridiculous this level is, so I'm going to be throwing out some math at all you guys. I didn't spend 13 years of my life doing math, and having it as one of my best subjects to just let it go to waste, so here we go! I recorded myself doing a straight run of Dark. No battles, no puzzles, nothing. Just a straight run from the bottom of Dark to the final boss's room, and I clocked it in at about 4 minutes 36 seconds. Doesn't sound so bad right now, but we're going to be building off of that from here. There are a total of 32 trainer battles from the bottom to top, and knowing that battles in XD can be pretty slow, let's say that every battle on average lasts 3 minutes. Of the maximum number of snaggable Pokemon in XD, 36 of them are in Citadark. Almost half of all Shadow Pokemon are in this final level, and discounting the final boss's Shadow Pokemon, which I will for now, let's say 2 minutes on average for each Shadow Pokemon. You rematch every main Cypher boss again as you climb, as well as Greevil's 2 main henchmen, a total of 5 battles, and will add 4 minutes on for each. The big beast Shadow Lugia, if you don't use your Master Ball, will be upwards of an average 10 minutes, and this final Greevil battle upwards of 15 minutes, so let's just stick with those average times. For the final touch, let's say that all block, crane, and falling puzzles, as well as collecting items, total 20 minutes, all the backtracking to heal and the time spent using items to heal is 12 minutes, and all the dialogue and plot equal 10 minutes. When we plop all those numbers together, I got an answer of the whole of Citadark Isle taking around 247 minutes and 36 seconds, or around more than 4 hours, or more simple terms, an incredibly fucking long time! I wasn't kidding about this being a long level. You pretty much have to clear your whole fucking schedule if you want to tackle this thing in any kind of efficient way. But you know what the worst part is? For most players, myself included, it can take even longer. Most of the Pokemon you're snagging are all fairly high leveled and are typically either late stage evolution Pokemon or rare Pokemon, all with low catch rates, meaning you're going to need a lot of Pokeballs to catch them. If you run out of them, you have to climb back down Citadark, leave on Robo Kyogre, and buy more Pokeballs. Also, at the beginning of Citadark, the levels of the Pokemon you're fighting are at the low mid 30s, while at the top, you'll be up against mid high 40s and some 50s. If you're training a full team of 6, there's almost no way to get all of them to that level to match the final battles. You know what that means? Climbing all the way back down, leaving Citadark, and grinding levels at the Colosseums or Mount Battle. All of them are the same trainers over and over again until you have the levels you need, which can take literal hours to achieve. And even then, the final fights can be absolutely brutal and time consuming. In the end, this is one of the most ridiculous and absurd final levels I've ever played through. It takes literal hours to get through, and then requires additional hours to be trained enough to take on the final bosses. The expectation to catch all these insanely powerful Pokemon that are thrown at you in insane amounts is a true test of your skill and patience. But I still like this level. You are pushed to your limits and are forced to exceed them, putting all your Pokemon skills to the test in enduring a long dungeon, catching dozens of hard-hitting, hard-to-catch Pokemon, and surviving onslaughts of tough trainers with the team you've spent all this time raising. And when you succeed, the satisfaction is immeasurable. I'm the Speedster, and while Citadark is the most tedious level I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing, there is still a joy to be found in this challenge. See you guys next time.